Welcome back, everybody, to the KC Sports Report. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and as always, I am joined by my two friends in Joey Segura and Lucas Murphy, and we're going to break down the Kansas Jayhawks 2022 National Championship win. Ladies and gentlemen of Jayhawk Nation, your Kansas Jayhawks defeated the North Carolina Tar Heels in the championship game by a final score of 72-69, and with this win, the Jayhawks clinched their sixth national title, really only their fourth national title in school history. But who's complaining? Because for the first time in 14 years, the Kansas Jayhawks are on top of the college basketball world. And I am joined by two of the biggest Jayhawks fans, alongside myself. I'm a pretty big Jayhawks fan too. And we're going to talk about this game and really how it transpired because, let's be honest, it wasn't the ideal game. A lot of stuff went wrong. At one point, the Jayhawks were down by 16. They went into the half trailing by 15, and they pulled off the greatest college basketball comeback in NCAA history. So, Lucas, what are your initial thoughts of this comeback? I mean, I know you're a diehard Jayhawks fan. You were able to experience a lot more titles and winning than I was. You know, what is this like for a Jayhawks fan that has already seen this?
I mean, the comeback from 2008 was bittersweet. I mean, it's obviously that was my first experience for the Kansas Jayhawks winning a national title. But to be 16 points down, to feel like you've been gut punched, in the first half, you shoot 30.3% from the floor, 2 of 7, 28.6% from the three-point line, and really didn't get to the foul line whatsoever. That right there, to me, was I didn't give up, man, and that's the thing. I was in, like, a series of group texts with a bunch of people. I'm like, you can't give up. You can't give up. This team has overcome adversity. This team has come back on K-State. This team has too much experience. They've worked way too hard to get to this point. It's not over, and clearly we saw that, man. And I think, to me, out of everything that we experienced in that entire roller coaster of emotion, I think that comeback capability is what is most exciting for me. I mean, obviously raising the trophy, but to know that they did something that nobody else has done in history, and to give Bill Self his second title is just one of the most greatest feelings. And just how we did it, man, it's just I'm lost for words a lot of the time with this stuff because you always hope that it's your team. You really do. You hope it's your team. This is by far, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, the hardest championship to win in all of sports. There are 64 teams that can win at any time during the tournament, and you never know who's truly going to be there. And in the end, it was Kansas this time. And obviously we're going to go through the stats and really break it down. But, man, like you said in the beginning, man, we're national champions.
That feeling, man. It's something that I haven't experienced in such a long time. And I was alive for the 2008 team. I can't even believe I have to clarify that. But that was really the season before I got into watching basketball. And I remember being heartbroken by losing to Northern Iowa. And I remember crying to that game. And my mom still brings it up to this day. But to see them finally hoist that NCAA championship trophy that I got to witness live, it's just a feeling that's undescribable. And Joey, you're a huge Jayhawks fan. What was this moment like for you?
Well, so I'm a little bit younger than Michael. I'm 17. I was maybe 4 when we won the championship. I don't even think I was 4 yet when we won it in '08. I became a huge Kansas fan back. My first year was the Ben McLemore year in 2013 when Trey Burke. Yeah, great team. When Trey Burke killed us. And I remember being an 8-year-old and just crying myself to sleep. And kind of like what I've been saying all week, this win was just like the inner 8-year-old in me just was so happy. Just because, and with Kansas basketball, to me it was always a matter of when, not if. Like, I was for sure they were going to win a championship at some point in my lifetime. It was just, am I going to be, 17? Am I going to be 25? Am I going to be 30? How long is it going to be? But for them to win the way they did, where I never gave up faith, even when it got bad, it was just, this team felt like a team of destiny in the end. That's just what it felt like. They all stepped up. I've never been prouder of a Kansas team. I'm not sure Bill Self has ever been prouder of a Kansas team. I mean, just the way that they all came together, it was something special, and this team is a special team.
And that's the thing. And honestly, it took me a while to realize this. This is not a all-time talented Bill Self team. It's not. They don't have a single 5-star guy, I believe, on the roster. But the thing that makes this team great is they play great team basketball. They pick each other up. When guys struggle, you see other guys step up. And you could get to a point where if you look back at this whole tournament run, Remy stepped up in some games. Ochai stepped up in some games. David McCormick went from being a literal, like, a guy that you would boo on a nightly basis to we could literally retire his jersey in the rafters of Allen Fieldhouse, and he will be up there forever. Like, he was that good in the Final Four. And I think that's a testament to how good this team is from top to bottom and how much depth that they have. But honestly, I mean, you said it perfectly. Just the vindication of 9-year-old Michael and 8-year-old Joy, who just had their heart broken in one of these tournament games. And Lucas, you said it best. It's hard to win in March. It's hard to win these tournaments. I mean, a program like Kansas that is, I would argue, a top 2 most successful organization or a school in college basketball history, they've only got 4 of them. And it's just shows you how hard it is to win. But Bill Self finally got that natty number 2. I don't think there's a single debate if he is the number 1 coach in Kansas history. I think he iced that last night. And I also think that we saw how good he was as a coach just to keep his guys motivated and inspired when they were down by 15 at halftime in a national championship. You know how hard that is? I mean, Lucas, what do you think the process was like at halftime when Bill Self was addressing these guys when they're down by 15?
You know, he kind of talked a little bit about it in the press, and even when he was up on the stage accepting the trophy. Basically, he said he presented them, he presented them the scenario. Would you rather be down 9 with, or what was it? I think he said 9 with 9 minutes to go.
It was 9 with 2 minutes to go because that was the 08 national championship.
That's what I meant. Yeah, 9 with 2. Or would you rather be down, obviously, the 15 with the 20? And they chose the 15. And I think, for these guys to be around for as long as they were, I mean, Oach has been there forever. David's been there forever. I mean, the list can go on. I mean, Tien obviously has been there forever. Like, even though Tien isn't on the floor, he still plays a very important role because he's one of their friends. He's one of their teammates. And, like, the funniest thing is that they're all up in the media's feeding them questions. And, David's the one that typed them up at halftime. And basically, like, David's like, we've been here before, or whatever. And he's looking at Christian Brown, and Brown's like, no, I've never been down 15 in a national title. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But I think, like, that shows kind of, like, their relationship. And, this is by far not the most talented Bill Self team. But I think from a cohesive standpoint, it's probably one of the most tight-knit groups. And, like, that, to me, is what gets these championships won. And I'm not saying, like, in 2008, like, they really weren't overly flashy in 2008. Like, they had some good players. Like, Rush was on the team. But, like, that team was pretty cohesive, too. And so I think, to me, it kind of, in a grand scheme of things, Bill knows how to coach those guys, and that's why he goes and gets certain players and doesn't always necessarily go and try to get the one and done, because that's not always the best formula. And I think last night it was a perfect example of just playing the game of basketball. And I mean, because for me, man, today I had to sit there and comprehend the fact that David McCormick went against Armando Bacot for majority of the game with 3 fouls. And every time Mitch Lightfoot would step on the floor, he would immediately hack somebody and get a foul. So he had to go off the floor. There was at one point where David did have to sit because he had the fouls, and he really kind of approached it with Jalen Coleman-Lance. He brought KJ Adams in at one point. Like, he went small at one point, and it just wasn't working. So David went out there with 3, and I think for majority of that second half, David was out there with 3 fouls and found a way to get it done. And I think, to me, that was the most, he didn't obviously win, the tournament, MVP. They gave that to Ochai, but David deserved it just as much as anybody because of his statistics that he put up in this tournament. And like you said, I'm pretty sure 33 is going to be put up in the rafters.
I wouldn't even argue it. At this point, David McCormick has earned everything that he's got coming to him. Anything negative that I've ever said about him, forget about it. He has earned every single right of praise and everything that's coming because he was truly phenomenal. You do not win a national championship without David McCormick playing very valuable minutes. He dropped 25 and 9 against Villanova, and then he dropped 15 and 10 against North Carolina. Like, I think that he was the most valuable player in this Final Four. He didn't get it. He's not Ochai, but that doesn't really matter because Ochai, he didn't play great in this Final Four, but he played good in some tournament spots to kind of get you there.
They gave it to Ochai, in my opinion, more just because of the name, because of the resume that he had. I think Dave deserved it. To me, it wasn't particularly close either. That's why I was kind of surprised that Ochai won it. Just like you said, the fact that he dropped 25 and 9 and then 15 and 10 and hit probably, besides Mario's miracle and some of the shots that Danny hit at the end in 88, some of the biggest shots in the history of this program. And that's what was crazy to me is we were texting earlier in the game and I said, Dave is playing with an amount of confidence like he's a god. He is playing like he knows it. And one of my favorite plays ever in the history of Kansas is at the end when he put up that low post hook and he missed it. And he just goes up like a bat out of hell and he wasn't going to be denied. And he just gets it. And Wilson was open in the corner and I can't remember, somebody else was open on the wing. And I was like, oh, kick it out. Somebody's going to get open. And he goes, I'm going to work. And he just put it right back up. And
it's who he went against too, Joey. He was double teamed at that time against Manic and Baycott.
Well, and that's the thing, because
the biggest dude.
We talked about it off air. Shout out to Armando Baycott because that guy was playing through all kinds of injuries, and he re-aggravated that ankle injury really by the court basically giving up on him. But he left the game, and that left Brady Manic, I think, one-on-one against David McCormick.
And that was what chicken.
That's what led to that post-move jump hook, which had David McCormick giving that Danny Manning fist pump, and it put the team up 72-69. And I don't know about you, I have not screamed more after a shot in a long time after seeing that jump hook. And to me, I know there was still a lot of game left, that was the icing on the cake. That sealed the game, and I know that they could have potentially tied it with a 3, but that just felt like David McCormick put us on his shoulders and gave us a national championship. And I think that, for as critical as I have been in the past of David McCormick, I think I wasn't really fully aware of all the treatment that he had to go through for his foot. He was going 3 hours a day for 7 months.
They didn't let on with how bad his foot was, for sure. For sure. We didn't know.
And I think, honestly, the early criticism of David McCormick, I believe, is fair. But it doesn't matter what you do in the regular season. It doesn't matter what you do in conference play. It matters what you do in the NCAA tournament. I mean, he just had one of the best tournaments that we've seen from a Kansas big man in a long time. And arguably
since Danny,
maybe the best. Because Danny kind of played a hybrid of roles and whatnot. But I think that what makes me so happy about this team is the collective unit and how everybody got involved. I think Christian Brown in the second half in transition, and he was able to put back a lot of those shots that were not falling in the first half. They had a better chance but they could not buy a bucket in the first half. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on that, Lucas. What was that kind of like? Because I think the Jayhawks got a lot of open looks. They had some great transition moments, and they just could not finish.
Yeah, man. For me, it was, and I said it on my podcast, because I did an immediate reaction last night on the beat of KC, and, I think they came out the gate just numb and went up, 7-0, and then it's kind of like that adrenaline wore off and the environment started to kind of come in on them, and they started to realize, hey, we're in a national championship, and some of that pressure probably got to them too, because how many times have you seen Jalen just miss bunnies like that? I mean, just easy layups, and just it seemed like they were off. But I think like kind of like I hit on those numbers, man. Like that's uncharacteristic of this team, and I think that going into halftime, settling in and really kind of getting through that is what did it. But man, like you said, Christian Brown played 40 minutes. Ochai basically played 37 minutes. Jalen Wilson was in there for 34 minutes, and David, if he didn't get those fouls, would have probably been in there for well over 30 plus. Like you saw who, at the end of it, when it all came down to it, who was reliable and who needed to be out there. And between DeJuan and Remy, that's where I give Bill probably the most credit, because those two interchanged at probably the most perfect times, because like DeJuan was playing the most lockdown defense, but then it seemed like when Remy would come in, Remy was just knocking down important shots. How many clutch threes at least can you think of? I know for a fact off the top of my head 3 were just perfectly placed like 3-point shots. So I mean that's what you get when you have, in my opinion, one of the greatest coaches of all time, definitely the greatest coach at Kansas. And yeah, man, that first half was definitely tough to watch, and it was frustrating because you just knew that that's not who this team was, and it's definitely not how you wanted this team to go out. Like, if we lost to them because of just playing the game of basketball and it came down to the end, let's say that, Love hit that shot at the end and we lost on a last second shot, then okay. But to go out and lose by 16, 15 or whatever it could have potentially been, that's just not this Kansas team.
I agree 100%. And to get back to your earlier question, Remy was 4 of 6 from 3, and he made some big-time shots down the stretch. And, we kind of heard about it all season long. Like, where is Remy Martin? Where is Remy Martin? Oh, is he in Bill Self's doghouse? And Remy just said, wait until March. Wait until March, and he will deliver. And that's exactly what he did. Because you could name, I guess, 3 or 4 players, but specifically Remy Martin, he came up in March, just so many big moments and gave so many great minutes and hit so many big shots that I don't know what this team would have done without Remy Martin.
They wouldn't have made the Final Four. They wouldn't have probably gotten past Creighton without Remy Martin. This could have been a second-round exit for this team, and instead we are the champions of the entire bracket. Like, we did that. Remy, what he did, I love Remy Martin. Like,
how can you not?
I love everybody on this team because they won a championship. I mean, and not just because that. When they even battled back and they cut the lead from 15 to they got it down to really when it was 3 or 4, I said to myself, I was like, even if they lose, it's going to suck. It's going to hurt. It's going to hurt even more because they came back. Yeah. But I was so proud of that team just because they could have at halftime been like, it's
just
over.
Folded.
Yeah, and they didn't. They came out with vengeance. They came out and they played defense at a pace which, by the way, I've stood by DeJuan Harris his entire time at Kansas. I will continue to do so. I am not about the DeJuan slander. He led that comeback with the defense he played. The intensity
100%.
that he brought, that rubbed off on everybody else. And he forced them into bad situations in Kansas. Everybody else just picked up off that energy, and it just was over from there.
And that almost leads to my next question. What was the moment in the game that you kind of felt, oh, the Jayhawks are going to win this? And maybe not win it entirely, but I can think of when they cut it to 7, when they cut it in half, I was like, oh, this game is going to go. The Jayhawks have a legit shot at winning it. And I think it was probably after the Jalen Wilson and one. That play, it's just oh my, you can't stop them.
That was the one, was that the steal by DeJuan?
It was the steal.
That's the play I was thinking about. Because was it a 3 that we hit before? And then, or was it a 2? Because we scored before that. Then they brought the ball up, and DeJuan got a steal at half and then gave it to Jalen for the end.
I don't think it was a 3. But, yeah, Lucas, what was your moment in this game where you're like, oh, the Jayhawks are actually going to come back right now?
So, real quick before I hit on that, one of the craziest moments, and it's related to this, is they panned to Bill Self. And I don't know if you guys have seen this yet or not. There was roughly 10 minutes left, and Bill's up off on the floor in the coach's box, and they must have somehow magically panned that camera to him at the perfect moment. Nobody's around him, and he looks kind of up and says, "We're going to win this game." And everybody believes he was talking to his dad. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. It's on Twitter. It's floating around. If you guys get a chance, go look at it. For me, the chance that I felt we were coming back, and it's crazy, and this is going to sound so crazy, was that DeJuan Harris lob to David McCormick right out the gate, man. That, to me, completely changed the entire, when David threw down and basically, I mean, he probably could have got a technical because he was about to rip that rim off. That, to me, was like an indication, Bill probably got into him at halftime, even though they said that he didn't. I bet Bill got into him. They came out with a different type of motivation, and that alley-oop dunk, man, was just off the chart. And then it seemed like just from there, man, it's like you said, the pressure, the speed, DeJuan led that, and Bill Self even said at the very end when he's talking to the entire team, he looks over at DeJuan and says, "You started this run."
I think that, honestly, basketball is a game of runs. Teams go on a 7-0 run or a 9-2 run, and it's just all about slowing those runs down and then getting to a point where you can go on your own runs. And I just felt like coming out into the second half, the Jayhawks only needed to score, maybe cut it to 10 with 10 minutes to go.
What I was hoping.
And we have a really good shot at winning the game. And I think they were leading by 6 at the 10-minute mark or something absurd like that, which honestly is absolutely absurd because I'm looking at the stats right now. North Carolina murdered us on the glass. They had way more offensive rebounds. They had 55 total rebounds. I think they doubled our rebounds. How we won this game when getting crushed on the glass, I will never understand. I don't understand how we won this game, but I think that the biggest statistic other than the 55 rebounds is probably Caleb Love going 5 of 24 from the floor. That might be the biggest indicator of why the Jayhawks were able to steal this win, because Caleb Love, the guy that really hit that shot against Duke to get him to that moment, he kind of choked in the big moments. And I think that a lot of it probably came down to them just being tired. North Carolina did not really have a deep roster. They had a good starting 5, but when Brady Manick got into foul trouble and Armando Bacot was dealing basically with one ankle because he was already dealing with a bad ankle injury from just the tournament, and then he re-aggravated it. So this is a banged-up North Carolina team, and I think ultimately what Lucas and Joey have said, it's totally true. Kansas was playing more towards their style in the first half. Let's slow the game down. Let's just get easy buckets just playing off of our offense. And I think in the second half, you saw the Jayhawks say, "We're going to make you run with us. We want to see if you can do it." And they couldn't. They were just gassed. And I think it's a credit to how conditioned this Jayhawks team was because, we didn't really see a lot of substitutions out of the KJ Adams and whatnot. And you just had 5 guys running up and down the floor in a fast-paced affair that gave them a lot more buckets in transition. And I think that when you look at this game and you rewatch the highlights, the amount of points that the Jayhawks got in transition in the second half, in the first 5 minutes of the second half, is why they won this game.
And I agree with that. And when you look at the end of the first half, when the offense was just stalling, which, like you said, we were kind of playing slow. We were playing more to North Carolina's pace. Bill Self couldn't really figure out what to do because Dave at that point was starting to get in a little bit of foul trouble for that point in the game. So the offense was stagnant. He just started throwing different lineups out there just to see literally if they could score at all.
Stay afloat.
Yeah, just try to score in any way. KJ got in. Jalen got in. He's bringing all these guys, which I'm fans of all these players. Don't get me wrong. I think KJ is going to be a hell of a player at Kansas one day. I think the potential this kid has is crazy. But if you had told me going in, yeah, they would have put him in for a little bit of time in the national championship game, I would have been like, oh, either you're up big or you're, what happened. But I think once they came out of halftime and they started playing Kansas basketball, which is pressuring North Carolina, pressuring on defense, make them make their little mistakes. And then once North Carolina made mistakes, like you said, it became a track meet. And that's how Kansas plays. Yeah. That's how we want to play. We play fast. This is one of the more up-tempo teams I've seen under Bill Self. So for them to go out there and completely just flip the way the game was played in a half, it speaks to me to Bill Self's coaching ability. Because there's very few coaches to me that could just flip the script to a game like that in a matter of a 15-minute halftime period. That is absurdly impressive.
Well, and really quickly, the Jayhawks in the second half outscored the Tar Heels 47-29. Like, the amount of points that they were able to get off is just insane. And I think that, once we kind of saw a couple of those buckets fall in the beginning of the second half, you kind of just saw all the momentum just drain out of the Tar Heels. And I think that was kind of when I felt, okay, the Jayhawks are going to win this game, because it just looked like they were defeated at times. Now, they ended up coming back and at one point took the lead 69-68. But David McCormick yet again fought back. He scored, I think, the last 2 buckets for this team, and that's why he's a legend. But Lucas, what were your thoughts on just kind of the momentum shift in this game, and how big do you think that played on the overall impact outcome of the game?
I mean, that was by far the biggest. I mean, Christian Brown. It all. You could sense it as a fan. And anybody just watching the game of basketball could just feel the shift in momentum. And that honestly gets to guys, especially when, you start to see the other team come back the way they did. And I'm sure North Carolina started feeling the pressure. And, their depth outside of, holy smokes, guys, give props to Puff Johnson. The guy played so much that he threw up on the floor. I mean, That guy was incredible. And outside of that, their depth really wasn't tremendous. So I think that pressure started getting to them. And like I said in the beginning with KU, you sense that, pressure. You start to realize, like, the environment you're in. Like, if you guys saw how when they panned out, they were in New Orleans inside, what I used to call Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Now it's Caesar's Palace, basically.
It's Caesar's Superdome. I was like, wait, the Saints play there? I didn't even know it was their stadium.
But when they panned out, man, the entire you would have thought it was a Super Bowl environment. That's how many people were there to watch this national title. And, I think that probably started setting in. And, the swing of things. And I think really when they kicked in is when KU got it down to within 5. And I think, that's when it just flips. The switch flipped completely. And I think that's when they knew that they were going to win this game. And, credit to North Carolina. They truly never gave up until the very end. And even, it came down to a last-second shot because DeJuan Harris stepped on the line. And, I think, real quick, I think that play was going to be designed not for Love. I actually think that play was going to be designed for Manick, but Manick fell down on the runaround.
Like twice.
Yeah, and I think that forced Love to make that shot. Will we ever know, I guess, if they ever talk about it? But, yeah, man, I completely think that – and as a fan watching this, man, the emotion, I fist bumped so hard I thought I threw my shoulder out, guys. I thought I was going to have to go to the doctor today because, I was all hyped. I was probably playing defense myself in the living room against nobody because that's how hyped I was. But, yeah, man, you could sense it, and the momentum changed too. Like, you can always tell too, like when people call timeouts and the certain crowds start to roar. Each individual band there is playing. Like when the one takes over and starts taking charge, the home, that specific band starts playing. Like KU's band was playing almost the whole second half, guys. So yeah, it was awesome, great feeling.
It just felt like this was a team of destiny. Like they were going to win this game, and coming out in the second half, I think this was a team on a mission. I think that they were playing a lot more for themselves in this game. I think they were playing for the 2020 team that never got an opportunity to compete in a tournament. And I think the biggest guy that they were playing for was Bill Self's dad. And I think that, we kind of alluded to it earlier. The way that Bill Self was able to coach in this game was honestly the Jayhawks' biggest advantage. Like what he was able to do to rally the troops at halftime and just some of the simple, I guess not so simple, adjustments that he made in the second half to kind of put the right guys on the right people. I mean, we remember Brady Manick was killing us in the first half from behind the arc, and they were kind of able to neutralize him, put a man on Armando Bacot, and we kind of talked about Caleb Love's impact on this game because he really wasn't that good. And I think that Bill Self made it his mission to neutralize some of those guys. And I think that there's very few men that can motivate a group of other men quite like Bill Self. Bill Self has been doing this for such a long time, and he knows what to say, when to say it. And I think that ultimately, Bill Self was the Jayhawks' biggest advantage.
Speaking of when you say that, I got one final thing for you, too. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown. This is the final recruiting rankings of each KU player that was involved in that game last night. DeJuan Harris, number 94. Ochai Agbaji, number 132. Christian Brown, number 130. Jalen Wilson, number 53. David McCormick, 36. Remy Martin, number 84. Lightfoot, number 116. Not one of those guys was in the top 10. Not one of those guys was even in the top 20 of their recruiting classes. Bill Self can coach.
He elevated his talent to win a national championship.
What he does.
And honestly, I don't want to end this video because I'm going to look back at this in 5 or 10 years. Hopefully the Jayhawks have already won 2 or 3 championships by that point. But, you know, we don't see these often. And it's honestly, it's so rare and it's so special when they finally do get to do that, because we're all going to remember where we were when we saw our team cut down the nets. And I was able to share a really good moment with my grandma, who kind of got me into Kansas basketball, and I was able to watch that game over at her house. And as Lucas said, you're always very hype. I mean, I was jumping up and down and fist pumping, and I honestly, I think my grandma got concerned with her neighbors, because when David hit that turnaround jump hook to seal the game, I might have woken up everybody within a 10-mile radius, because I just knew that this team was going to win this game after that shot, and they were able to do it. So, Joey, what was that like for you, like a personal experience? Like, where were you when you watched the game? Like, what were some of the fun moments you had?
So I started out watching it with my family at my uncle's house, but we have kind of a weird tradition there where we think it's a curse almost to watch it there, because like we lost the Super Bowl there. We were there when we lost to Villanova in the Final Four. So I went home at halftime and just watched it on my own. And
Good decision.
Yeah. When I tell you, I had my Apple Watch on. When I tell you my heart rate was genuinely 155, I'm not joking. My resting heart rate was 66 for the day. It was 155. I was sweating. I lost my voice. From the moment the second half started, I was yelling. I was just getting hyped after everything. I was like, oh, yeah, there you go. Just play good defense. Just screaming the same stuff over and over while listening to Kanye. But just the joy that I got out of it was unrivaled. It's just something that in my short life so far is one of my favorite moments I've had, just to finally get it. And it was just like, I couldn't believe it. Like I called my grandma and I called my brother after, and I was like, I can't believe that the Jayhawks are champions. Like I couldn't believe it.
It's an all-time great moment. Like, this is something that we will never forget. And Lucas, what was your experience like?
So you guys are going to laugh at me. I watched it from my living room, and you guys know I have a son that's about to be 3 years old, so he was obviously in bed, and I couldn't really yell a whole lot. But I watched it from my living room. I busted out my 2008 National Championship Good Luck Charm shirt, put that on. But the funniest part of the whole night was when David hit that shot that was over Manic and over Bacot. I yelled to the top of my lungs. I said, "Forget the mules, just load the effing wagon." And my wife looked at me like, what is wrong with you, and what did you just say? She's obviously she's not a KU fan. She's born and raised in Missouri. I'm starting to turn her to I call it the dark side, so where she's starting to come over to the dark side. But, she's experienced her first KU game inside Allen Fieldhouse, and she knows the players' names, and she won't tell you, but she was rooting for David McCormick a lot. And but yeah, that was by far one of the craziest things. I don't know why I yelled it, but yeah, I said, "Forget the mules, just load the effing wagon." And Yeah, guys. For me, it was just as bittersweet as 2008, and 2008 for me was probably how you guys are feeling. It's really your first full-on experience. I had the opportunity to watch it from Allen Fieldhouse, and immediately went down to Mass Street and hung out with so many, KU fans and obviously so many students. And but I think last night was one of those experiences that is just something that I'll always remember too, because I was able to say I was watching it with like a loved one. And I mean, it's KU basketball, and of course, you want to message everybody and celebrate excitement. And I busted open the 2022 Jay Rieger's Rock Chalk Rye Whiskey and celebrated a little bit with that, and had a little bit of a rough morning. But, man, guys, it was one of the most incredible experiences again. And, I think each sport presents a different feel. Like, not everybody's a KU fan. Almost everybody in Kansas City is a Chiefs fan. And, everybody's a Royals fan in Kansas City, but not everybody in Kansas City is a KU fan. And so to just win it and not everybody be satisfied, I think is a little bit sweeter too, because it's unique to you, your fandom and like who you root for. And man, KU basketball, it's an incredible thing.
When it's funny because I watched the Mario's Miracle shot probably thousands of times. I've seen it thousands of times in hype videos and whatnot. When I was a kid, I would watch the Rock Chalk Championship DVD almost on repeat. I think, my mom always talks about how she sent me to school and I came back a Jayhawks fan, and how I'd always just watch that DVD over and over and over again. And like Mario Chalmers and Brandon Rush and Darrell Arthur and Jackson and that group of guys and what they were able to accomplish and how special that was. And just heartbreak year after year, like 2009, I really thought that team was super good. And in 2012, when they went all the way and then they fell short to Kentucky, I love that team. And to finally see a championship squad when really this wasn't probably the best team that he's had, but it doesn't matter. Like, they won the Natty, and since they won the Natty, they are one of the best teams he's ever had, because it is so hard to win in March. And it almost felt like this was vindication for so many years where they were not able to accomplish that great goal. And you could see it after the game. Bill Self is talking with Paul Pierce and Brandon Rush and Devon Dotson and some of the other guys. And he's just like, we did this for you guys. You guys didn't win it. We won this for you.
And speaking of that, I was going to bring this up. Michael knows I'm not a Devon Dotson fan. All the respect to the kid. I'm proud of. I hope he does well. I'm not a fan of Devon Dotson.
That's for other circumstances.
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Anyway, I thought it was the coolest thing that Bill Self had a championship hat and he handed it to Devon and he said, "This belongs to you," because he never got that shot. And that team, I'm not sure that team would have won a championship. I'm not going to say that, but man. They had, like Bill Self said, the best defending big man in America, arguably 2 of the 3 best defending guards in America that year. They were a special team, and I thought it was a really cool moment for Bill Self to pick him and to go out of his way to give that hat to Devon and be like, this belongs to you because you never got that shot.
Well, and that's the thing, the Jayhawk family is just so big, and I think that's kind of the great thing about college sports, is that it makes you feel like you're kind of part of the team or part of the school. I mean, you can be part of the school. Yeah. We will be next year. And it's just it's always special, and to share that moment with friends and family, sports is always the greatest thing because it brings people together. Now, obviously, it helps when you like the teams, but to have that moment of winning a championship, to experience that with family, that's something that you think about even when some of them pass away. Like, one of my favorite moments is with my grandfather, who passed away a couple of years ago. We watched the 2012 border war at his house, and I remember we went to go get food afterwards, but I just remember coming back from that major deficit against Missouri, and that's a moment I'll never forget, and that wasn't a championship. So it's just moments like that always stick out, and to be able to do that and spend that time with my family, I'm really appreciative of. And it's just, that's stuff that you're never going to forget. And I think honestly, that's just why this team is so special, because we were able to accomplish the ultimate goal. We really were.
You know, I'm going to show my age a little bit, but, you know, my memories are as far back as us going against Carmelo Anthony against Syracuse, and you guys talked about going to sleep and crying, and, man, I've never felt more sick in my life as a kid watching that loss. And I kept that one on tape and went back and would watch it and reflect on it. And, you know, as I grew up, you know, we made it a tradition to travel. If KU was in a vicinity of traveling, we would go to as many games as we could. And so I saw, you know, in St. Louis when we took on Georgia Tech, I was sitting 6 rows up from the court, and, you know, we unfortunately got beaten that game. And so I've had my ups and downs as a KU fan, and, you know, you always just want to remember the highs, and this is as high as it gets. And I think for me it's more gratifying because it's Bill Self, if that makes sense. Like, obviously our former coach is sitting in the stands, and, I mean, you see where his true loyalty lies. I mean, he's wearing, you know, North Carolina colors, and, you know, he coached there and won national titles there. And to me, like, most of my history of KU basketball is Bill Self, and I want him to win as much as he possibly can. Well, whatever they end up doing for him when his time comes to an end, because obviously they can't name the court after him, and they clearly aren't going to be able to put his name on the building because of whose name's on it. He needs to get one of the biggest statues, and the road out front needs to be named him. You know what I mean? Like, Bill Self has got 2 national titles. I believe he's going to get well more. I mean, he's, 59?
Yeah.
50 years old. Most guys coach until they're 70, in the mid-70s. And I think, you know, he's going to stay at Kansas for his entire career. And, I'm just so glad. Like, I remember the day he got hired, and I was sad, but I was extremely mad because it's like Roy Williams just did us dirty, just up and left, and now we get this guy named Bill Self, and see how far he's come, and he's got a lifetime contract now, and he's just putting kids up in the rafters. He's putting banner after banner for Big 12 titles. Like, it's just, that to me is the most exciting part too, is we got one of the greatest coaches ever, and you know, that's what makes me happy for sure.
And so I've had this idea for a Bill Self statue for a long time, and you might not like. I don't know if you.
No, he needs a statue.
Well, not just that. Like, I know what I want it to be. Like, my favorite photo in the history of Kansas basketball is when we lost to Villanova in 2018. Devontae Graham comes off that floor, and he's just sobbing. And Bill Self just grabs him and he hugs him, and it's Bill Self embracing Devontae, and Bill Self's just smiling. Because, there's something about that photo that just captures what he is as a coach to me. Like, he rides with those kids. Those kids get up there on senior night every night, and they cry because of what he means to them. Like, I remember watching Svi and Devontae both get very emotional just discussing what he did for them. And the winning's amazing. He's the greatest Kansas coach of all time. But to me, I think the stuff that people have to say about Bill Self, like, really, when you look at the program, I can't think of very many players who would have anything bad to say about Bill Self. He's very upfront with them. He tells kids, if they're not going to play, you just need a transfer. You need to go elsewhere. He wants these kids to do as well as they can. He wants them to achieve great things. And to me, that's why I'm so happy that he's our coach. Is not only is he a great coach, he's just a good person. Like, the things he does, Coach K is one of the winningest coaches of all time, arguably the greatest. But I just think I don't know. I don't like the way he loses. I don't like a lot of the way that he acts as a person. I don't know that you can say the same about Bill Self, because there's never been a time really where Bill Self lost and you're like, oh my God, he didn't shake this person's hand, or he said something bad about the other team, other college players. He doesn't do that. Bill Self, aside from the Adidas scandal, which is big, but
they're not taking our natty. They're not
nope,
taking it.
They might take 18, but they're not taking this.
They can have that one.
Yeah, who cares?
We go to so many Final Fours, they can just take the one where we didn't win it all. But honestly, one last thing that I want to say is that I think what also makes this team so special is, for the most part, they're all local kids because of that Adidas scandal and the need to recruit within the state. Christian Brown went to high school in Overland Park. Ochai Agbaji is a local kid. You have so many of these guys that grew up in the Kansas area and came up through that high school rank, and they just won a national championship on the highest stage for their hometown school. And that, to me, is just so incredibly special. And guys, I'm so appreciative that we got together to do this podcast, even though this is like, our second or third episode, but yeah. I'm just glad that we were able to really just recap a natty. Do you have any closing thoughts, Lucas?
Go to Joey real quick, because I got some stuff.
Okay, Joey, closing thoughts.
Just what a day it is to be a Jayhawk. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. Just the fact that we win, and not to be the fan who gets absorbed in, rivalries even when we're doing well, but I'd just like to point out, for all the trash that K-State fans and Mizzou fans talk, K-State, yeah, you can keep your Idaho Potato Bowls and your NIT appearances, and Missouri can have their third place SEC East, shirts that they print off when they don't even win the conference overall. We win championships in one sport. Football is another thing. Leipold's got us, I believe, but we're blue blood. We win. We don't have, our bragging rights aren't mediocre accomplishments that tons of other schools do. We're a championship program. We have one of the probably 15 greatest coaches to ever do it. We're the winningest program in the history of the sport. Everything in the history of basketball can be traced back to Lawrence, Kansas, and that national championship just adds to the history that we're building. And man, I just love being a Jayhawk.
What a great closing sentence. And Lucas, do you have anything?
God, I should have went first. I don't know how I'm going to back that up. Basically what I was going to say is from an overall perspective, we kind of touched on it. North Carolina had 55 rebounds. KU had 35. Kansas had 18 turnovers. North Carolina had 9. We had 8 second chance points. North Carolina had 28. They went on an absolute tear. They had a 16-point lead and just absolutely tore it up in the first half. At the end of the game, the time with the lead was 18-32 for North Carolina, 18-32 to Kansas. It was even. The Kansas Jayhawks found a way to overcome one of the most adverse situations in any sports game ever. And, man, it's incredible. We're national champions.
Well, man, I'm never going to get tired of saying that. The Kansas Jayhawks are the 2022 men's national champions. And this is the greatest stat that I think I'm going to read tonight. North Carolina, coming into this championship game, were 46-0 in NCAA tournament history when they were leading by double digits in tournament games, and they're now 46-1. And that one loss comes from our Kansas Jayhawks. And with this win, the Jayhawks secured their 4th national title in school history. I guess you could say their 6th. Their 4th NCAA championship title. And it's just such a sweet feeling. And I'm just so happy that we were able to do this and talk about a team that is now forever going to be remembered as a championship team. David McCormick is going to go down in the legendary category of Kansas players. Ochai Agbaji, his name's already up in the rafters. It's just a matter of time. The Jayhawks went from being a great team going into this tournament to being a legendary team coming out of this tournament. And I'm happy to say that your Kansas Jayhawks are the 2022 national champions. And with that being said, guys, I appreciate you for listening to this video. Go Jayhawks and rock chalk.